What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. For those of y'all who are new, my name is Cleo, also known as Mommy Clee. And today I'm going to be talking about women in the Bible. I don't hear a lot about women in the Bible. And one day I'm just thinking to myself, like, this can't just be me. And I started thinking, like, I wonder how a woman back in the day would go through what I'm going through today. I just decided to start researching more about women in the Bible. I'm reading out of the Bible version, Neve, NIV. I have some notes here that I'm going to be reading off of that I took. Excuse me if I'm looking down sometimes, but I'm just learning this too, so we learn this together. Today we're going to be talking about Sarai, and that's pronounced Sarai, S-A-W-R-Y-E, Sarai. Many may know as Sarah, and Sarah is a wife to Abram. Diving right into the challenging yet rewarding life of Sarai, she is introduced to us as this beautiful young woman, and her name actually means princess. While reading about Sarai, quite frankly, there are a few different times where God has to step in and rescue Sarai as if she really was a princess. You know, like the knight in shining armor. God was her knight in shining armor on many different occasions, like she really was a princess. Reading out of Genesis 11:29 through 31, Genesis 12:1 through 3, and Genesis 12:1 through 20. So one day, God directs Abram to pack up everything, move him and his family to Canaan. And due to famine, they don't go right away. They have to stop and stay in nearby Egypt. And Sarai, she's so beautiful, but that made Abram worry because he thought that the ruler of Egypt, the Pharaoh, was going to kill him to take his wifey. They decided to tell a lie of omission, which a lie of omission means intentionally excluding important information. The lie that they told the Pharaoh was that they were siblings, and technically they were half siblings because they had the same dad. But that's the point of the lie of omission. They were excluding information. They were siblings, but they was still really married. This situation is relatable to me because I can remember a couple of different occasions in the past where I felt like I needed to tell a lie to cover up a bigger truth, which ultimately did not turn out to be a pretty situation. Because of this lie, the Pharaoh goes ahead and takes Sarai in as a concubine, which is a woman who lives with a man but has a lower status of the wife or wives. However, God intervenes. Here he goes, rescuing her like a princess in a castle. He intervenes by afflicting plagues on Pharaoh's family. The Pharaoh is so upset, he ends up finding out that they are married and he just doesn't want anything to do with it. He returns Sarai to Abram once he finds out that they are married. That could have been avoided. Done messed this man up, done messed his family up, all because ultimately Abram and Sarai didn't trust in the Lord to protect them. So they resorted to deception. This is totally relatable to nowadays, to walk by sight and not by faith. Even though the Lord wants us to walk by faith and not by sight, we're human. I'm just blessed that I have people who surround me who know God, rely on God, and keep their faith in God, so that when I'm going through my hardships and going through my struggles, I have them to keep me motivated, keep my spirits high, and keep me in my faith. Moving forward, I'm reading out of Genesis 16:1 through 16. We're skipping ahead many years. After Sarai and Abram have been in Canaan now for 10 years, married now for a long time. Sarai is 76 years old around this time without any children still. Feeling the pressure on herself, Sarai decides to convince her husband to take Hagar, which is their maidservant, as a second wife and conceive a child with her. She decides to have her husband make a baby with her maid. And they did exactly that. And when Hagar did conceive the baby, she started to look down on Sarai. And Sarai was just fuming. She was so upset. She started to blame her husband like it was his fault, like she wasn't the one who put him up to this idea. Her husband, Abram, just said, to heck with it. You go ahead and deal with this situation as you see fit. And he allowed for Sarai to mistreat Hagar. Using her position as a privileged wife, Sarai oppresses, afflicts, and humiliates Hagar in many different ways. And Hagar is just like, I'm out of here. She dips. She runs off into the wilderness. Imagine that. Hagar pregnant, alone, by herself, just doing these people a favor. And this actually reminds me of women nowadays, women who are pregnant and they find themselves alone or homeless on the streets. Ultimately, though, an angel does come to rescue Hagar out of the wilderness, but that's another story. This also reminds me of women in our current days who opt into surrogacy, and they're really feeling that pressure. They're having a hard time conceiving a baby, so they decide to have another woman carry their child, really feeling that pressure like Sarai did. In Sarai's situation, she was getting old, and that's not always the case nowadays, whether the woman is getting old or she's still in her young days and just can't conceive. That pressure that a woman feels when she's not able to successfully carry a child, it does something to the spirit, and it can make your mind go to different places like Sarai's did. And she was just determined to have a child with her husband, and she decided to make her own choices. Reading out of Genesis 17, 15 through 21, and Genesis 18, 1 through 5. One day God tells Abram that Sarai is now to be called Sarah, which means noble woman. Abram's name is changed to Abraham, which means father of many. The name change signifies a new season and a new purpose. Sarah will be appointed the first matriarch in the line of Jesus. And for a while, Abraham thought that his son with Hagar, Ishmael, was going to be the one that God chose to make nations as numerous as the stars. But that wasn't the case, because one day God unexpectedly visits Abraham's house. And back then it was customary for the wife to remain in the tent while guests were present. Sarah starts ear hustling real hard, and she overhears God reveal to Abraham that the following year, Sarah will have a baby. And Sarah, at this point, she's 89 years old. She laughs. God heard her laugh and reminds both of them that nothing is too difficult for him to accomplish, okay? It's relatable to laugh, though. I understand why Sarah laughed, because she's 89 years old. Imagine that, going all your life, all these years, without being able to bear a child. And then one day, at this real old age, God comes and tells you that you're about to bear a child at the following year, which she'll be 90. That's laughable. Realistically, nowadays, 90-year-old woman carrying a baby. But nothing is impossible through God. And not only did God bless her with a child, but he also blesses her with being the matriarch of nations, and kings will come through her because she will bear children. This is a perfect example of God's plan happening in his timing. Okay, God does give us the freedom of choice, and the choices that we make, he may have to work around them, but ultimately, in the end, it's going to end in his say-so. Now, Sarai, she rushed under pressure, convinced her man to have a baby with another woman, which ended in the results of a bunch of negative emotions within the family. Had she just waited, she would have seen what God had planned for her. But this is so human, and it's so relatable to nowadays, because we just can't wait. We want to make our own choices. We want to control every single thing. And personally, I'm just like, okay, God, I see what you did there. I see why you made me wait. But man, going through that waiting period, it's like waiting in the lobby at your doctor's office, and you don't know if it's going to be good news or bad news. Such human behavior. Continuing reading out of Genesis 20, 1 through 18, and Genesis 21, 1 through 7. Oh, and also Hebrews 11, 11. So some time passes and they move to Gerar. Once again, Abraham is afraid that in this case, it's King Abimelech. Abimelech. I don't know how to say that name. King Abimelech. Or is it Abimelech? Either way, this man is afraid that the king is going to kill him and take his lady. And even with Sarah aging, she's still gorgeous, okay? And y'all know what they did? They lied. They lied. Again, same story. They told this man that they were siblings. And at 89 years old, Sarai was taken away to be the wife of the king. But of course, they're not that slick. Here comes God intervening, rescuing Sarai like a princess locked in a castle. God sends a message to the king in his sleep, telling the king that Sarai is have I been calling her Sarai still? Sarah. Her name is Sarah, my bad. If I've been calling Sarai Sarah, if I've been calling Sarah Sarai after her name change, my bad, Sarah. God intervened and told the king in his sleep that Sarah is the wife of Abraham. Give her back. And that's what he did. He not only gave Sarah back to Abraham, but he sent them on their way with gifts. I'm talking silver, servants, animals, just to make things right, even though the king is the one who was tricked. Even though God made his promise to them both, giving new names, establishing their titles for their future, they still lied because they did not trust in God to protect them. And in God's perfect timing, he gives Sarah the miracle that she's been waiting for. He brings Isaac into the world. Isaac means the one who laughs. Sarah is joyful and she believes that others will laugh with her when they hear her testimony of her patience, miracles, and promises. We are coming to an end. I'm reading out of Genesis 21, 8 through 21, and Galatians 4, 22 through 31. Now, speaking of laughing, one day Sarah witnesses Ishmael, and Ishmael is Hagar's son. She witnesses Ishmael mocking and laughing at Isaac. Isaac is Sarah's son. Sarah demands Abraham to send them away, and Abraham banishes his own son, Ishmael, and his mom, Hagar. Here we have Sarah acting out of emotions yet again. But this is relatable because her motherly instincts kicked in, and she just wants to protect her son. That's relatable because I'm a mom, and I'm a water sign, and I'm just an emotional being by nature. So this was totally relatable to me. God ends up rescuing Hagar and her son Ishmael in the desert, which is actually its own heart-tugging story within itself. But Hagar and Ishmael, they're in the desert. They run out of water, and she places her son some distance away behind a bush so that she doesn't have to see him die. So sad. But an angel ultimately comes down and saves them. To end this on a good note, God is showing us here that where us humans can be cruel, God is just so loving and compassionate. And that's a wrap for episode 1 of Women in the Bible featuring Mommy Clee. I hope that somebody who tuned in learned something today. I know I did. Again, we're going to be learning together, going through this series, learning about women in the Bible. Just because Sarai is beautiful does not restrict her from humanly actions. She lied, she deceives, she had all these emotions, and she didn't trust in God. And it's really an eye-opener, because when I think of the Bible, I think of godly, everybody is so innocent, and that's just not the case reading about women in the Bible. So it really gives me some comfort. Comment down below and let me know what y'all think about this video. What women should I discuss next for the Women of the Bible series on my YouTube channel? See y'all next time. Y'all will see me.